Hello, welcome to another video. This is still part one, core beliefs. We're under the next section, why most businesses fail, the truth no one wants to hear. And this question is a follow-up of the last one. Why do failing businesses blame the economy, competition, whatever, instead of owning the real cause? I sort of touched on this a little bit. I believe it comes down to a couple of different things, although it almost always ends with the ego, and that is the feeling or the desire to be at a certain level where you don't have to do certain things, or you feel like there should be an easier way to do things. um as I said before, there are things that a business usually does to generate business, and over time business owner doesn't always want to continue to do those things. As I said in the example before, there was a coach. She was getting one-on-one clients by having these conversations, engaging with them over direct message, getting on a phone and selling them. And that worked. But she had, in her business, she had reached a certain level where she was bringing enough revenue where she felt like she didn't have to do that anymore, or she didn't want to do that anymore. And this immediately caused her traffic to stop as she tried to do this masterclass funnel. Now, while we were working on the funnel and getting the messaging and things right, she had expressed concern that she wasn't getting enough business. And when I told her she should temporarily go back to what she was doing before, she kind of said, nah, she didn't want to do it. And after a couple months, it was easier for her to close the business than it was for her to simply go back and do that work again. This also comes from a lot of business owners not realizing that it's temporary. So this is an aspect that I say that a lot of business owners get stuck working. You've heard the term working in the business instead of on the business. Well, it's nice to work on the business. A lot of times, depending on the size of your employees, if you have any, you're gonna have to work in the business. And it's very easy to get caught up in the day to day where it feels like an endless cycle, where it's like you get up, you do the same work, you go to sleep, rinse and repeat, and you don't actually see where you're going because you're stuck in the day to day repetitive task of things. And that makes people say, well, why do I even have business? Like, I didn't start a business so I could work harder than I did when I was working a job and get paid less, right? And that's a valid concern. And usually what I tell people is they need to step back and look at their trajectory. Where are you going? Like, you're doing this day to day to bring enough revenue in to be able to pay for these other ways of doing business so you don't have to do this anymore. But until you hit that point and until things start to work, you have to do this. Like, the grind isn't going to go anywhere until you reach those thresholds. And that waiting game that people play can be very taxing. It's also why business loans exist. I'm not saying you get one. I'm saying a lot of lenders, especially when it comes to small business, understand this aspect and realize that most businesses could grow to the size they want to be if they stuck to what they were doing and just did it as effectively or efficiently as they can. But they know that most business owners want a shortcut. So they're willing to give them this sort of cash infusion to let them put the systems, people, and processes in place so they can act as if they've reached that level and start generating that revenue and then pay it back. Now, this works if the model's already substantiated, like, hey, this is now a working model. I just need the money to grow it. And that's something that happened with me when I started my e-commerce business, is when I got my ads right, my follow-up right, my retargeting ads right, every dollar I put in, I got four back. So I spent all the money I had because it was working. And then what did I do? Well, I ran out of money. So for my particular situation, since the business was new, I sold everything I owned. Right, much to the despair of my wife. She was not happy that I did that, but I showed her the numbers and I assured her, hey, this is temporary because we need to spend this money to keep the business growing, and then the cash flow will catch up based on the sales, which is delayed. But I could see it going in the right direction, and I just put everything into it. And thankfully, I was able to keep the momentum going long enough by selling everything I owned to be able to keep the store growing. And then we had plenty of money coming back. And while that works for someone in my situation, a lot of other businesses, as I said, they sort of struggle at this point. They're trying to grow, but they haven't put the processes in place. They're not sure how the marketing works. And so they start to look around and they say, well, I can't grow because of the economy. I can't grow because instead of just looking at what they're doing and saying, how can I do more of this faster or more effectively? And that's that ego that gets in the way. Oh, you're so successful. You're so amazing. You should just be able to grow without having to keep doing this stuff. And that blocks their perception. Then it causes them to start to fail. And the problem is when a business starts to fail, a lot of times the business owner will then begin to panic because you have that cognitive dissonance of where their brain is telling them they should be, thanks to the ego, and where they actually are, thank you, reality. And they're fighting with each other. And that causes the person to sort of not know what to do next. And then they panic and they start either mass buying courses or coaches, consultants, and they spend very little on actual tactics. There are many times I've seen businesses spend $1, $2, $3,000 on a coach or a course, only to spend $100 or $200 on ads. That doesn't make any sense to me. It should be the opposite. You should be willing to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on ads, and if you need a course, it should only be a couple $100s. It should not be the other way around. But a lot of people believe they're just missing one little aspect, one little trick, and that if they can just get that, they'll be fine. And a lot of that has to do with the way courses and stuff are pitched. So why do failing businesses blame everything instead of just owning the real cause? It's more convenient. It's harder to go to bed at night knowing you're in the way of your business's success. It's much easier to say that's why I'm failing, and as soon as I can deal with that out there, then things will be easier, because then you can rest easy thinking you're doing everything you can. Reality hurts sometimes, but the actual reality of it is those business owners look at the situation as it really is, even if they're getting towards the end where it seems like there's a point of no return. They put their foot down, they say, okay, I wanted it to be like this, but it's clearly not. Let me go back to what was working. Those are the people that save their businesses. Those are the people who are able to grow their business. Once they're able to humble themselves, get their ego out of the way, and say, what is this? What in this am I actually not doing that I was doing before that was bringing me success? Can I do that again? Once you look at that, you can turn around real fast. A lot of times a business has a chance to survive even all the way up to the end if the owner is willing to face reality. That can be hard for some people. Anyway, hope that clarified some things. See you guys in the next video.